Hey there, my name is Drew Brashler, and I want to help you feel more confident in your production gear no matter where you're starting from. Today, I'm going to be starting a brand new series on vocals, and specifically vocals in a live setting, either on a stage with a big rock band or on your stage at church. But we're going to be diving in on the Behringer X32, and I'm going to be splitting this over a couple videos. One is going to be on EQ, and that is today. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I have some multi-tracks pulled up here on my Behringer X32 on the SD card with the X Live, and I am going to go ahead and let you take a listen to this. So I don't have any processing on the vocalist's mic. So there's no dynamics, there's no EQ, there's no low cut, which all of those three things I would be using with this vocal. And I have this turned up all the way on the fader to get enough gain to sit in a good spot in this mix. So let's go ahead and give this a listen real quick.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed, stole away my secrets. How could I deserve your love for me? Even in my...
Okay, let's go ahead and give that a listen, but without the band. So I'm going to go ahead and mute the band, and let's give this one more listening.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed, stole away my secrets. How could I deserve your love for me? Even in my weakness, you are always there.
So right off the bat, I hear a couple things that I want to fix on this. So I'm really excited to dive in. Now, I just want to mention that vocals are the most important part of your music. It's what everyone is singing to, it's what everyone is humming, and if you can't hear the vocalist, I mean, it's not a great show or a great church service. So we really want to make sure that our vocals are loud, clear, defined, and right up in your face in your mix. Now, granted, there are a couple musical choices that you can make to have those maybe sitting back farther in your mix, but for me, and most church settings, you will want that vocal to be forward in your mix and very clear, just right in your face. So let's go ahead and dive in and see specifically how we can clean up this vocal. Now, the first thing that I notice is the kick drum is coming through this vocal mic. Let's give it a listen, and I'm actually going to take my high band and do a high cut and roll it down so we can just hear what's coming through in the low section of this microphone. So here we go.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me.
That's the kick drum, that's the bass guitar, that's all of it that I can hear in that section. In fact, if I go to a later portion of the chorus, you can really hear it coming through. So I'm going to go back to the verse here, and I'm wanting to show you how to use the low cut to get this cleared up. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out this EQ first. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is select your channel and hit the View button in the EQ section. Now we can see that there's a low cut right here, but I'm actually going to use the knob on the upper left-hand section of this board to do this. So we're just going to hit low cut, and now we can actually take this up or down anywhere between 400 hertz and 20 hertz. So that's our low cut function. And what this is going to do is this is just going to cut out the low end. It's also called a high pass filter, which means that it's going to let any high frequency through this filter depending on what frequency you select. And that frequency that we select is right here. So let's go ahead and listen to this vocal and try it.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed, stole away my secret. I struggled through the...
Okay, so this is where I would choose to place this on this vocalist. And I'm going to go ahead and take it too far, and you're going to hear the vocalist start getting thin. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but your
So we can
love
hear that all the
ran
low end of this
after
person's
me.
voice just went away.
I struggle through the garden.
Likewise, if we go too low,
I struggle through the garden,
we're still going to get all that kick drum and all that bass guitar coming through.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent.
So what you want to do with this low cut is you want to get it high enough where you are removing all of the low end rumble, but not too high to affect the vocalist's tone. So if we bring this up too high, it's going to make this vocalist sound thin, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to just find a happy medium in there. Usually anywhere between 100 to 190 hertz is where I'm going to be placing this low cut. On a female vocalist, I might be going all the way up to maybe 250 hertz. There are some people that go higher than that. That's just not me. I'm going to go ahead and select 149 hertz for him right now. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lower a little bit of the low end to get this vocal to be a little less muddy. We can hear right here,
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but I struggle through the garden.
So that that note
I struggle through the garden
is just a little bit on the muddy side, especially if you can consider multiple vocalists all singing that same note. That section of the vocal happens to be also where a whole bunch of band instruments are going to be playing. Your bass guitar, your keys, maybe tracks, electric guitar, acoustic guitar. All of those instruments are going to have that same fundamental note that he just sang on that through the. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and get that down a little bit because I want that frequency energy coming from the band and not the vocal. It's not a great note in the vocal range, but it's a great note in all of the rest of those instruments that I just mentioned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab the low band, and I'm going to set this to a shelf. Now you can use that by pressing the low, and then you can change through the type of function this EQ is. So there's PEQ, VEQ, low cut, and low shelf. Now, PEQ and VEQ, as you saw in a previous video, I kind of dived into this, but PEQ is going to be a smaller bandwidth of adjustment, and VEQ is going to be a larger bandwidth of adjustment that you can make in this EQ curve. So, but right now we're just going to go ahead and select low shelf, and I'm going to bring this up to about 300 to 400 hertz. And so let's go ahead and give this a listen, and I'm going to go ahead and boost it.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but your love ran after me. You gave me one.
So this vocalist doesn't have a super thin voice. He also doesn't have a super bassy voice. So with me deciding to cut a little bit of this out is going to be an okay thing. If you do happen to have a vocalist that is sounding very thin, you might want to boost this area. But in this case, I'm wanting to go ahead and bring that down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed, stole away my secrets.
So let's go ahead and listen to what that was before and what that is after. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the low cut and the EQ at the same time for this first pass.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but your love.
And again with them on.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but your.
Okay, the next thing that I'm hearing, and it's actually right where my frequency band 2 is at, I'm going to go ahead and boost that and let you hear this spot that I'm hearing, and I'm going to get rid of it. So.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent, tempted but your love ran after me.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that out.
Gave me what I needed, stole away my secrets. How could I deserve your...
So a lot of vocalists will have this buildup in the mid frequency, especially if you're using like an SM58 or a dynamic microphone, and the vocalist has that microphone really close, or if they're maybe doing a cupping on their microphone, that 400 to 500, sometimes up in the 600 range, that is just going to sound very hollow sounding. So I'm going to boost that up again so you can hear that one more time. So that's a hollow sound. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that by just bringing that down by about 5 dB here. So let's go ahead and listen to this again before and after. So here it is before.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent.
Okay, and then after.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but your love ran after me.
This is exactly what I'm wanting to do with a vocal mic. I'm wanting to do a low-end cut and get rid of all of that low-frequency information. I'm wanting to reduce the amount of muddy lows in a vocal, and I'm wanting to get rid of that mid kind of honky sound of that vocal. Now, one thing that you can do with a vocal, and you have to be very careful about this, is you can bring in some airiness to a vocal. And when I say careful, I really mean it, because sometimes if you boost the very, very high end of a vocal, you can get into one of two things. You can, one, get into the S's, which my voice has a lot of S's. So I use a de-esser on my recorded vocal of my mic because my S's bring in this really loud S sound. And so if we boost, like, say, this airiness, which happens to be the 10 kilohertz and above, if we boost that section and the vocalist has a lot of S's, then those will be more pronounced in a bad way. Additionally, if your vocalist is right in the path of the PA and you boost that, you might be able to get into some feedback, which is bad. But this vocalist actually will sound pretty good with this little boost. So I'm going to go ahead and boost this here, and I'm going to grab my high band. I'm going to do a high shelf, which again, you can just hit this mode button until we get to the high shelf, and I'm going to raise this all the way up into the 10 kilohertz and above range. And I'm going to go ahead and boost this and give you a listen.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed, stole away my secrets. How could I deserve your love for me?
Okay, so I normally wouldn't boost this much, but if you do want to have this airiness, and some people really want it, this is how you get it, is you put a high shelf and you turn it all the way up to 10K and above, and then you can boost it up. And this is an 8 dB boost, which I honestly would never do live on a board. But in this case, and in this example, it works. So let's go ahead and give a listen before and after.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but your love ran after me. I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but your love ran after me.
Okay, so that is a little bit much there on that boosted. Here, I'm going to go ahead and bring this EQ down, give you a listen on this first.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent.
And then bring it back up again.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but your love
give it another listen.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted,
one more
but
time.
your love. I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but
perfect. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to boost in the 2 to 3 kilohertz range, and that is right here. So I'm just going to do a wide bandwidth boost here. And this is going to be where a lot of the syllables and a lot of the good portion of the vocal to make it clear and defined is going to be sitting. So typically I will end up not boosting the high end like I am here, but I will do a little bit of a boost in this 2 to 3K range, and it's going to be really wide. So let's go ahead and just way over define this and give it a listen.
I struggle through the garden.
So this is way too much.
Tempted, but your love ran after
but that's the frequencies that I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and play this again.
I struggle through the garden, following a serpent. Tempted, but your love ran
let's add in that high boost again. And let's go ahead and listen to this without everything.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me.
And again.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after
And again.
me. I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me. I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after.
Okay, so let's go ahead and add in the band and give this a listen.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed, stole away.
And let's listen to it without all of the processing.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love ran after me. You gave me what I needed.
And let's give it a listen to with it.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your love.
There's a big difference between these two.
I struggled through the garden, following
Very low MIDI.
I struggled through the garden, following a serpent, tempted, but your.
Okay, so I'm wanting to go to a different portion of the song and show you where this airiness is not going to work. So I have my vocalist 2 here, and this is going to be the next section of the song that I really want to dive into. This is a female vocal, and she is singing backup to this song, and this is much further later in the song. This is the chorus, so I'm going to just go ahead and play it for you. All right, and let's go ahead and mute the band here.
I can see your light chasing after me.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do a couple of the same things that we did on that first vocal. And so I'm going to bring up our low cut here.
I can see your light chasing after me.
So that would obviously be too much.
I can see your light chasing after me.
But down here, it doesn't even affect
I can
it.
see your light chasing after me.
So I'm going to be
I
sitting
can see your
right
light
about there.
chasing after me.
Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the
I can
low,
see your light chasing after me.
and I am going to do a low shelf and bring this down again.
I can see your light chasing
And
after
again,
me.
there's going to be this frequency here.
I can see your light chasing after me. I can see your light chasing after me.
So this is the part that I want to talk to you about with this airiness, and this is where you have to be careful because vocal 1, the airiness sounded great. Vocal 2, I'm going to boost it, and we're going to hear some of these S's that I was talking about that you have to be very careful about. So I'm going to take my high band, and I have it on my high shelf, and I have it up at the about 12 kilohertz range, and I'm going to boost this by 8 dB like we did on vocal 1, and let's go ahead and listen.
I can see your light chasing after me.
All right, so
I can see your
the C,
light chasing after me.
all of those.
I can see your light chasing after me.
And so you can hear what I'm getting at. That S that you're hearing, right, when she says C is very abrupt when we do a high boost of this 12K and up. So you have to be very careful on this airiness boost that people talk about. So on this vocalist, I'm definitely not going to be doing that. I am, however, going to be boosting this 3 to 4K again, just to get a little bit more clearness out of this vocal. So let's go ahead and play with the band here without any of our processing.
I can see your light chasing after me.
And start it again.
I can see your light chasing after me.
Okay, here's with the processing.
I can see your light chasing after me. I can see your light chasing after me.
All right, so let's go ahead and bring both the vocals in at this point with this section of the song.
I
All right, and let's go ahead and turn off our processing on these two vocalists, and let's play this again.
I can see your light chasing after me. I can see your light chasing after me.
And again with the processing on.
See your light chasing after me. I can see your light chasing after me.
So that's a quick and dirty example of how I EQ my vocals on the Behringer X32. Is I do a low cut, I take a low shelf around the 2 to 400 depending on where I need to lower that low end. I do a mid-range cut, which is usually about the 400 to 500 hertz range, and then I do a slight boost in the 2 to 3 to 4K range, which is going to be a wider bandwidth, so we want to make this a wide Q. And then I sometimes do an air boost, but typically I do not. So one thing that I was noticing on this last section is how pointed some of these words were.
I can see your light chasing.
That light
I can see your light chasing after me. I can see your light.
those are going to be a little bit hurtful if you're pushing this PA really loud. So my next video is going to be on compression. And compression is going to allow us to take those really loud words and bring those dynamics down so we can bring up the whole vocal. And then we won't have to be sitting with this vocal at +10 and +8 on the board. So please subscribe to my channel, and that way you will know right when I release that next video on compression with vocals. Also, if you do happen to have any other questions on the Behringer X32, make sure you post below. I'm always browsing through those comments to get my next idea for another video that's gonna be helpful for you. But again, my name is Brashler, and thanks so much for watching.